I had a little photo shoot going on in Lothlorien, and I was like, yeah, okay, this is cool. What's going on, everybody? How y'all doing out there? I hope this video is finding you well. Welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Andrew, and if you are not new here, welcome back. Today, I am going to be discussing the expectations versus reality of the Lord of the Rings movie sets. I had the fortune of spending a year out in New Zealand before Miss Rona came and destroyed everything, and I thought I would just share what my experiences were like based on what I thought these locations were gonna be like before and what they were actually like when I got to witness them firsthand. There are timestamps down there in that description box, so feel free to jump around if there's any location in particular you would like to know about. And before we get started, I'd love it if you consider pressing that little subscribe button. I post bookish and writerly and entertainment-y-esque videos every Tuesdays, Thursdays, and sometimes Sundays, so I'd love to have you along for the ride. But now, with all of that out of the way, without further ado, let's get right on in. Alright, welcome back. I am just going to go through these in the order in which they came in the movie, not as much about the order in which I visited them. I will be skipping over the prologue in the Fellowship of the Ring because that shows all of these places that I will be talking about more in depth in a minute, and just dive straight into Hobbiton. As you might see in that description box, Hobbiton is going to be the one that I probably talk about the longest because it is the one that comes with the most pros and cons. I will go over the pros first because let's just keep it positive here for a second, but I definitely have some negatives. More negatives with Hobbiton than probably any other set. But the pros. First of all, this is the only set that still exists, which is a major pro because it's the only one that you can go and it's like, oh, I'm in Hobbiton. You can visit Bag End, you can go inside of a little hobbit hole, you see all the clothes hanging out in the dryers just like what they were putting them up out there in the movies. You even get to have a beer at the Green Dragon at the end. It was absolutely incredible to be able to see, and I was fortunate with when I did go and visit because after the Lord of the Rings movies were made, part of the agreement that was made with the government for New Zealand was that all plants and trees and anything that had to be moved had to be replanted, and it had to look exactly like it was before they ever came through. And they, I mean, with blades of grasses, they would have to take a GPS coordinate and put it in a specialized greenhouse and then come back and plant it exactly where it was when they found it. Like, it was no joke. And now seeing it in person, like, wow. But Hobbiton is actually someone's backyard. It's their farm. So when the movies came out, after the popularity of them, when they came back to make the Hobbit movies, the owner of the farm was like, yo, leave that set because people are gonna come and visit it. So now it is the only set that you can actually visit, which is equally a pro and a con. It is so overcrowded and it is so obnoxious, to be honest, and it's really difficult to have any fun there. I even went, first of all, this was 2015, so I can't even imagine what it might be like now. I was also there on June 1st, that's my birthday, down in the southern hemisphere, that's going toward winter, so it was cold, it was raining, and there was still like a gajillion people there. And the thing is, it's fine, but you've got a group of 50 in front of you and a group of 50 behind you, and when you're moving, it's like take a picture and go. Take a picture and go. Take a picture and go. Like, there's no time to like, oh, this looks cool, or oh, I want to like, no, you don't get that. You literally get like, snap, go, snap, go. You don't have any time to enjoy any of it, and it is the only location that is like that. So I get it, because on the one hand, obviously, like I've said, it's the only place that you can actually visit, and so that brings people to want to see it, and it is worth seeing. They give you a free beer at the Green Dragon at the end, so I had that plus a birthday beer, and I was chilling, but it was very disappointing for the fact that you're just shooed and you're rushed and you're moved, and I hear that it's worse in summer. I can only imagine. They probably put people in groups of like 75 to 100, and tours move every 10 minutes. So it's really like there is someone right in front of you and there is someone right behind you, and if the people in front of you take 15 extra seconds, and that takes out of your time because you're probably gonna get the tour guide like I did, who does not care if the group in front of you takes too long. So major con for that. Major con for that. But major pro for also being able to see it and for it to actually look the way that it does in the movie, because it's legit like built just like that, and for that it was incredible. Moving on, this Next one is gonna be one of those little random shots when Gandalf first goes to Isengard and he's telling Saruman about Frodo now having the ring, and they're talking about whatever right before Gandalf, you know, gets taken for a bit in Isengard. I just realized that maybe I should try and keep this spoiler free, I don't know. When they are walking down that little path and Gandalf is talking about whatever and Saruman is like, oh, your love of the halfling's leaf or whatever, that little path that they are walking on is in a park called Kaitoki, and it's gorgeous. I loved Kaitoki. It's right outside of Wellington. I will be talking about it a little bit more because this little random shot's not the only thing that was filmed out there. I wanted to mention it just because it is one of the few filming locations that's just like right in the middle of the park, like right in the middle of everything. You're just walking down and you're like, wow, okay, I'm literally in Lord of the Rings. And I kind of expected for every single set to be like super remote and hard to get to, and some of them, yes, but some of them like this, it's like, oh wow, you're like just picnicking right here in the middle of the park, and they probably just had to tell people not to walk down that path for the day, but I just thought that was cool. While we are on the topic of Isengard, outside of that little shot, the location of Isengard itself is down in a place called Paradise. There's a Glenorchy tour that goes through a lot of the locations that we are going to be going through today come out of Queenstown, but Isengard was pretty cool to visit. It's just like an open field. It looks pretty much just like it does in the movie, I guess, but they did digitally add some mountains into the background, which is kind of whatever. They've done that a few times. I'll talk about it throughout this video at other times that it has happened. It's one of those weird things where like most of the landscape shots are natural and real, but a lot of them are actually then digitally removed from where they actually exist and then put into the shot that they're needed. So there is some of that, but I don't really care. Another cool thing with Isengard I thought was that when you're there on the tour, they also film part of Prince Caspian out there, so you get to see some places where they film some Narnia stuff. Cathedral Cove is also out in New Zealand, and that is where they entered into Narnia in Prince Caspian when they were in the subway station, and then it opened up and they went through. That's neither here nor there, but Cathedral Cove, as a side note, oh my gosh, you should definitely put that on your bucket list of places to visit. Moving on, we are going to come into the first time that Mr. Frodo and his friends encounter the Nazgûl. This shocked me because of the ease of access for this one, because I talked just a minute ago about how I thought everything was going to be remote. This particular scene and these shots were filmed in a park called Mount Victoria, or Mount Vic for short. It is a beautiful little hike. It's like a hill in the middle of the city, and you just climb up to the top, and it's got these great views of the whole entire place. And Wellington, for those of you who might not know, is also the center of where they at least edited these films. They were made by Weta Digital. You can go to Weta Digital when you're out in Wellington, and it's really cool. I'm a little bummed about the fact that you can't take any pictures at Weta. You have a free tour, and it takes you back behind the scenes and shows you all of this really cool stuff. You get to shake Sauron's hand, you get to wear wigs and hats and all of these cool things, but you are not allowed to take a single picture for proof. So I did those things. And you should go to Wellington and you should visit Weta Digital because it was really interesting to see, and they have all these little trinkets, and I mean, you really do get to learn a lot of the history, and not only of just the Lord of the Rings, but everything else that Weta does as well. And they've done a lot of movies, so it's definitely worth checking out. Wellington itself is known kind of as Wellywood, but the people who live there hate that so much. I think it's hilarious. And they have a little Wellington sign that is like the Hollywood sign, and then just at the end the last few letters are blowing away because Wellington is actually the windiest city in the world. Actually the windiest, not just a nickname like Chicago, but it is, oh my gosh, I've never in my life ever, oh my gosh, but windiest city in the world, Wellington. But it's very true that you cannot beat it on a good day. I lived there actually myself. I worked at the Parliament when I was there, and I got to go walk up Mount Vic all the time. And as soon as you walk up the stairs into Mount Vic, right to your left, right at the entrance, is that first little shot where it's like a screech little thing, and then it's like, Mr. Frodo, come down! And then they get down, and then the only thing that kind of sucks is that tree that they hide under when the Nazgûl comes down and kind of looks at them was fake. I don't don't know, it's still cool to see like the forest where all of that happened, but it would be cool if that tree was real and you could hide under it and pretend like you were on the run from a Nazgûl, but you can't. Such is life. Next up, we are going to be talking about Rivendell. I have a confession before we get here. All I'm going to say is that this was the biggest letdown out of any of the places that I went, and I was bummed as hell when it was as upsetting as it was, because Rivendell comes with all of these incredible waterfalls and mountains, and it's all just like so beautiful and magical and mysterious. And the thing is that it's all on a set. Like, out of anything, this is the one that's on a set. And by set, I don't mean like Hobbiton, where it was like built outside like that. I mean like a set in a studio, completely separate from everything. And honestly, I was really bummed, because there's some gorgeous waterfalls in New Zealand, and especially compared to some of the other locations I'll be talking about in a minute, I really just felt kind of bummed out with that one. It too is in Kaitoki, so if you're going out to visit that random shot of Gandalf and Saruman, that's probably why you're actually going to be in Kaitoki in the first place, is to go and see Rivendell. However, if they did not have the little signs that say welcome to Rivendell, I wouldn't have even known. I wouldn't have recognized a single thing. It would have just been a bunch of trees, which granted, Kaitoki in itself is a gorgeous park. I have nothing to say bad about like the park itself. I was just upset with the Rivendell location. The only thing that's still really there is that little archway that they take right after the Fellowship is decided. And Frodo's there like, which way is Mordor, Gandalf, left or right? And then it's left. So that little art is there, and besides that, wouldn't have even known I was in Rivendell. Biggest letdown. Hardcore the biggest letdown for that. Moving on to Lothlorien. So Lothlorien is part of the Glenorchy tour that also has Isengard on it, and one of the things that they mention on that tour that I'm going to mention now, because it's very true, is that part of the reason that this particular forest was chosen was due to the natural lighting. I don't really know how to describe it. The natural lighting is magical. Especially too if I look at Lothlorien and the magical forest that was really filmed in Lothlorien and compare it to what I just said about Rivendell. I mean, Lothlorien definitely takes the cake for elvish locations for sure. But apart from the really awesome scenery out there in the forest, I enjoyed this tour as well because you get to play a little dress up, and oh yes, there's me dressed up like an elf, kind of. I was supposed to be an elf in that picture, but with that beard, I think I looked like a very confused Aragorn. I was the only male on that tour, and there was a bunch of middle-aged women who were very like, oh, dress him up, oh, let's get him all like, and then they gave me the sword, and then there was a photographer out there, and she was taking all these pictures. I had a little photo shoot going on in Lothlorien, and I was like, yeah, okay, this is cool. Really random, but it was really cool, and Lothlorien was absolutely gorgeous and totally worth going to check out and visit. But yeah, I don't know. So if you are a man and you go on that tour and you're the only man, you might get dressed up. The last one that I'm going to talk about from the Fellowship of the Ring, I know that there's a bunch of other locations obviously in the movie. I just didn't go to every single place. The only place in the first movie that I wish I would have been able to go to was Weathertop, but New Zealand bucket list round 2, there it is. The last one from the Fellowship of the Ring is just gonna be that river by the Argonath in Amon Hen. I did not go to where they filmed that last scene. I just bring that up because I want to mention that that river is that color. Oh my gosh, it is just that teal blue. I don't even know how else to describe it. That river that they are canoeing down on their way toward the end of the movie, it looks just like that. It is absolutely incredible. It is in Queenstown, and you can do the first ever bungee jump in Queenstown, and that very bungee will dunk you into this river. Personally, this was not the bungee that I chose because it was only 45 feet and I went for the 300-foot one because, hello, I would love to do this exact bungee just so I could dunk into this river, but I wanted to do the big Nevis. So there it is. Moving on now into the second movie. That little opening shot of all the Misty Mountains and everything, I just want to talk about those mountains for a moment. Oh my goodness, the Southern Alps of New Zealand. The North Island of New Zealand is very much Hobbiton. Rolling hills, gorgeous landscape like that. The South Island is where all of the mountains are. And the mountains are like, I don't even know how to, I grew up in Yosemite, okay? And those mountains are like, whoa! One great thing, if you are ever in Wellington, there is a little walk that takes you up to a wind turbine, and it's one of the 2 places in the whole country where you can see both islands. And when you're looking off at the South Island from the north, you can see those mountains and the Misty Mountains, all of those aerial shots of that beautiful, incredible landscape is really just like that. And here's a picture from when I was flying from Wellington down to Christchurch. I had a window seat and I looked out and I was just like, I can't believe that this place is real. I really can't believe that. I still can't believe New Zealand is real. After all of this time, I still can't believe it. Just mention the Dead Marshes. This was another one. I didn't physically get to go to the actual set of the Dead Marshes, but it was filmed outside of Te Anau. I don't know if I said Te Anau. I think I might have said that maybe incorrectly. Te Anau is right outside of Milford Sound. Milford Sound is one of the 8th wonders of the world. Very, very much deserves that title because it was incredible. There was a lot of stuff filmed in Fiordland National Park, and I would have loved to have been able to go everywhere. One of my other New Zealand round 2 bucket lists, it does actually include doing the Milford Track, which is like a 4-day hike that goes through that whole entire forested area. But I don't know, I'd love to be like, oh, I was out of time, and then people are like, yeah, but you were there for a year. But I was also working. I volunteered on farms. I'm actually going to talk about a farm that I volunteered on at the end just because they were going to be used for the Hobbit films, but they weren't, and I just want to talk about how gorgeous their farm was, but I'm not there yet. The whole Fiordland area where the Dead Marshes was filmed was absolutely incredible. The Milford Highway that takes you from Te Anau into Milford Sound is one of the most beautiful drives in the world. It was actually named that, so if anything else, if you don't actually get to make it to the Dead Marshes themselves, it is certainly a part of the country you do not want to miss. Scooping back around to that Glenorchy tour I've talked about a couple of times, you'll also be able to see the spot where Frodo, Gollum, and Sam discovered Faramir for the first time, looking up at them Oliphaunts. So those are just a couple of like little random shots that you actually can notice when you're there, unlike Rivendell. I wouldn't have even needed to know where I was at to know that I was in that place with the Oliphaunts at that random scene, but nope, still didn't know I was in Rivendell. I'm not bitter about that, it's fine. The next place on my list is my favorite. It is my favorite location from Lord of the Rings. It damn well might be my favorite location in the world. It is called Mount Sunday, and it was where they filmed Edoras. King of the Golden Hall right there, and let me tell you something, y'all, that is exactly what it looks like. Holy F. That rock exists. They built the little castle on it, obviously, and they added a little digitally to the front to make it look more like a town, but that actual rock exists. You get to climb it when you're on this tour. It is the most amazing experience. This is my New Zealand journal. This is me at Edoras holding Aragorn's sword, and this right here on the back is actually Helm's Deep, because they filmed Helm's Deep right like on the other side. You also get to hold Legolas's daggers and Gimli's axe, and you get to hold up the Rohan flag. And let me tell you, that was the best glass of champagne I have ever had in my life. This tour was out of Christchurch. It was my favorite day in New Zealand. It was my favorite location in New Zealand. It was my favorite Lord of the Rings location. I just would go back specifically to go back here because it was seriously the most incredible place I've ever seen in my entire life. And especially, sorry to complain about Rivendell again, but considering the fact that I went to Rivendell and didn't even recognize it, when I went off to Edoras, I was certainly not expecting for it to be as real as it was. I can't believe that I was fortunate enough to see that place in person in my lifetime, seriously. Like, it was that incredible. I'm still blown away. Just to read out of my journal really quick, I'm gonna just to show, I went to Edoras, the capital of Rohan, the other day. I'm pretty sure that's my favorite location so far, both from Lord of the Rings and in general. Now I understand why they say the South Island is prettier than the North. The Southern Alps are gorgeous with their snow-capped snow-capped mountains, their jagged peaks, and the way they all kind of topple over each other, it is seriously stunning. I have never felt so badass in the entirety of my life holding Aragorn's sword. It put me in the character's shoes. I was in this wicked epic setting carrying weapons because I had to carry Aragorn's sword up to the top of this mountain to take this picture, just so y'all know. And I was waiting for an orc attack at any given moment, and I was always on alert. Oh, and we stopped on a frozen lake, and it was my first time seeing a body of water fully frozen to the point where you could actually walk out on it. That's true. And I went out and I was hanging out on a solid frozen lake. Super fun that day. Moving on. That's actually gonna be it there for all of the 2 towers, so I'll move down into the Return of the King and we will finish off this little Lord of the Rings adventure. I don't know about you, but I am ready to go back to New Zealand and go back to all these places and all of the places that I haven't been yet, so you come with me if you want. So I've only got a few from Return of the King since most of the places in Return of the King were already seen in the previous movies. One I would like to talk about is the Pelennor Fields, where that big epic final battle occurred. As with the Dead Marshes, I did not get to go to the Pelennor Fields themselves. I did, however, get to go to Twisel, which is the area in where it was filmed. And it was filmed outside of a place called Lake Pukaki. And Lake Pukaki is the only reason I'm even putting this out there, because Lake Pukaki was absolutely incredible to look at. And when I was at Lake Pukaki, I didn't realize where we were. Like, I didn't realize I was looking at the Pelennor Fields, or else I would have been like, hey bus driver, give me a minute, because I wasn't there on a Lord of the Rings tour. I was with the bus tour that I had signed up for to take me around the country. Lake Pukaki is definitely a lake worth seeing, because that blue ass water, I don't even know how New Zealand does it. Like, everything there is just so clean and so perfect and so, I love it so much. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is actually just a mountain range called the Remarkables. They are found in Queenstown, but anytime they are seen in the movie, they have been digitally added. The mountains themselves are literally like right in the middle of town, so it would have kind of shown off other things that they didn't want to put in the movie because of the town. So anytime you see this little mountain range here, like when Pippin and Gandalf are on their way over to Minas Tirith after leaving Rohan, those exist, but they don't exist where they think that they exist. It's a game here with New Zealand. What is real, what is not, and what is real but in the wrong location. So that's the game that you're gonna play the next time you watch the Lord of the Rings movie, and then you're gonna be like, Andrew, was this real or was this fake? I'm gonna be like, you never wanna watch this movies with me because I'm bad enough as it is with the quotes, but now that I've basically been everywhere, I'm the worst person to watch these movies with. And last up, before I just quickly talk about my honorable mention, Mount Doom, Mordor. I mean, I know that they've came here way before where I'm at right now, leaving it at the end. I'm leaving Mount Doom specifically as like the last place on here because it was actually also the last Lord of the Rings location that I went to. I have so many good things to say about this. First of all, Mordor is part of a hike that is known as the Tongariro Crossing. It is one of the most beautiful hikes in New Zealand. It takes you over 2 volcanoes, one of them being Mount Doom. Like a broken volcano, there's the Emerald Lakes, which look beautiful, they are beautiful, but that is sulfur, so that smells horrible, and just like the Bog of Eternal Stench from Labyrinth, if you touch that stuff, you yourself might not stink forever, but whatever you're wearing needs to be trash. But that hike is absolutely incredible. I was on another bus when I went there, and I would love to do this hike again because that bus that I came with also came with a time limit, and they would leave you. Like, you would start at one side, and it's a 7-hour hike, and so the bus would drop you off at 9 a.m. and then they'd be like, so we'll be at the other side of this hike and we're leaving at 4 o'clock, and if you're not there at 4 o'clock, we're leaving you. And they left. They seriously leave people for not getting there in time, and they say specifically that they are not going to wait for you if they find out that you've attempted to climb Mount Doom, and I hate that. I thought that was so stupid. Are you joking me? It's Mount Doom. Why can I not do this? I would love to go back to New Zealand and take my own effing car and then just Uber to the other side or something so I could actually summit Mount Doom. I did climb what I could of it. It's supposed to take you 2.5 hours to get to the bottom of Mount Doom. I got there in 1 hour and 15 minutes. Anyone out there who has done that hike? Yes, I did go over the Devil's Staircase that quickly. But I only got 45 minutes up and 45 minutes down, so I only made it halfway up Mount Doom. I would love to do it again. For those of you who might be interested or do not know, there's no path. So when you're climbing up that volcano, it is loose gravel and dirt, and you actually have to keep your eyes up for falling rocks because the people above you can accidentally like let something loose, and there's no trail, there's no nothing. It's everyone just flat chested climbing up the side of the thing, which is why it takes so long to do. But I would love to be able to actually finish that. That hike though in general is just absolutely worth it for that for sure though. Oh my goodness, I think that mostly takes care of everything that I wanted to say. I just want to do this one little shout out toward this farm that I worked on. It was 1,500 acres. It was absolutely gorgeous. They were supposed to be used for the Hobbit movies when Guillermo del Toro was supposed to be the director, but once Peter Jackson took over, he decided to do it somewhere else. I still thought it was really cool being on this farm because it was so epic, and it just reminded me of, I mean, so many of the locations and random scenes and things that I didn't talk about today are in people's backyards, and that's why you can't really go to them. It's because people are just like, yeah, come film the Lord of the Rings out like on my front porch, it's cool. But it was awesome for that as well, you know? So there it is, everybody. Those were the expectations that I had going in. That's what really happened to me coming out. It's definitely worth seeing New Zealand just by itself. It's definitely worth taking at least one Lord of the Rings tour, even if you've never seen Lord of the Rings, and even if you don't like Lord of the Rings. Especially on that Edoras tour, we talked about this with the tour guide a lot, because he said that people take this tour and they've never seen Lord of the Rings, or they hate Lord of the Rings, but they're just there for the scenery, and the scenery in New Zealand makes anything worth it. Oh my gosh, I could talk about so much more from New Zealand outside of just Lord of the Rings locations, which, hey, if y'all want to know more about New Zealand, you let me know, I can talk. But that should be doing it for the Lord of the Rings expectations versus reality video here. Hobbiton's cool, kinda sucks. Rivendell, don't bother. Just make a special trip out to New Zealand for Edoras and Mount Doom. If you liked this video, I would love it if you would give it a little upvote. Maybe even hit that little subscribe button if you want to join me for more future adventures. And see you next time.